Producer Joe here from the Working Fans Podcast. And at the Working Fans Podcast, this is just a podcast that three lifelong fans created to have a place to talk comedy and pro wrestling. Now, our comedy podcast releases every Tuesday, while our wrestling podcast releases every Thursday. We release bonus episodes under the moniker Working Fans Presents every now and then. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, any major podcast provider. The important thing is just please like, rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen to us. Now, we have started a new thing. We are now on Amazon and Audible. So those episodes release every Monday. And that's kind of going through the archives and just releasing our old episodes in a new area. So if you want to live through the process with us again, take that journey with us again, you can find us over on Amazon and Audible. Now, if you can't get enough of us in the audio form, check out our YouTube. It's youtube.com/C/Working Fans Wrestling Pod, or just search Working Fans Podcast on YouTube. We have the whole archive is up there. And if you listen to the Working Fans Podcast, you are more than familiar with the 531. That is our signature segment where we take your top 5 lists on a particular subject, vote it down to a top 3, and then debate it down to a top 1. Now, guys, if you want to hear 3 guys talk shit about comedy, wrestling, life, anything, you will enjoy the Working Fans Podcast. Fans, welcome back for Working Fans Presents episode 16. This is the first episode of Horror Business, a limited October run special where I'll just sit down each week and talk about different horror movies and things like that I've watched. Fans, welcome to Horror Business, episode 1, where we highlight, or where I should say I highlight, some horror movies that you can watch over this Halloween season. It's been tough with COVID over the last couple of years. Nobody really got to get out last year, so everybody's making up for it this year with your haunted hayrides, your haunted houses. But I'm going to give you your in-home entertainment options. If you're looking, you got a Friday night, you want to watch a scary movie, what's available for you out there? This week, we are starting with the Shudder streaming app. It's a horror-themed streaming app with plans starting at $4.75 a month, 7-day free trial. I was in anyways because they had the Creep Show series. I was excited for it before it came out, and they've got 3 seasons up there. It's amazing. But let's not hold up any further. I just want to jump into it because the first thing I watched was the Creep Show animated special. 2 stories on this. If you're not familiar with Creep Show, the original movies were put together by George Romero and Stephen King, and they're scary stories that almost have like that Tales from the Crypt / Twilight Zone kind of twist to the story. But the first story on this animated special was called Survivor Type. And it's about this guy who crash lands on this desert island, hoping to get picked up. And in the meantime, he finds a pen and paper and starts writing his life story to keep his mind off things. Through that story, you not only see his descent into psychosis, but also you get to see kind of what brought him there. And it's an interesting turn on things. The second story on this is Twittering from the Circus of the Dead. It's interesting because it's told through a young girl's Twitter feed. And I was really interested in that storytelling because basically you just get to see she's on vacation with her family, same old things, embarrassed by her mom, brother, dad. But as they get off the beaten path, they find this unique attraction. everything appears to be an elaborate show right up until the end. I'll tell you, this Creep Show animated special, little gruesome, even though it's animated, but really good storytelling. And if you're looking for something interesting to watch, I would check this out. Now, I'm going to warn you about horror business. I'm not going to give you these really in depth reviews. I'm going to give you the basic idea of the story, tell you kind of what I thought about it without spoiling anything. Because half the fun of some of these, especially the Creep Show stuff on this list, is seeing where that turn comes and just enjoying the story like that. Now, let me get this up because first off, we're talking about the Shudder app. Like I said, $4.75 a month, 7-day free trial. I believe it's a part of the AMC family. Don't quote me on that, but I believe I saw that when I was researching this yesterday. First thing I talked about was that Creep Show animated special. Heavily recommend this. Next up, Elvira's 40th anniversary. Very scary, very special. With her being in the news recently from releasing that book, I saw this, and I'm always interested in a collection where you have a host that's presenting a series of stories. Maybe I'm just a sucker for that old Rod Serling way of presenting things. But the first movie up in the very scary, very special is Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. I was aware of her as a figure, but had never really watched a show or movies with her. And this is a great 80s movie where she's set to get this Vegas lounge act, but she's short a little bit of money. 50 grand, I believe, was the name in the movie. Not that that's a little bit, but when you're in the entertainment industry, I would think it is. Now, as she finds out she's short this money, she also finds out that her great aunt died and left her money in her will. She goes to her aunt's former hometown to collect this and finds out she gets left with a house, a dog, and a cookbook. At first, she's a little let down, but the storytelling in this movie is great. The jokes are on point, and it's entertaining. It's a fun 80s movie. Goes, I'd say, about an hour and a half. It's not very long at all. It's worth checking out if you've never seen it and you want like a fun Halloween watch. The next thing up is the original House on Haunted Hill from 1959, starring Vincent Price. If you're not familiar with House on Haunted Hill, a man is throwing a birthday party for his wife at a haunted house and involves 8 seemingly unrelated strangers to come celebrate. Now, if they can make it through the night, they get $10,000. If anybody doesn't make it through the night, the cash amount raises for those who do survive. It is a very interesting movie, and whether you watch the original or the remake, they're both amazing. I also highly recommend this. And this is the high point of the 40th anniversary special, because the next movie up is City of the Dead, starring Christopher Lee. And it's about a professor who sends his student to the site of some witch burnings in the 17th century for research for a project. When she gets there, she finds out there's something much darker going on in the town. And that's where I'm going to leave it story-wise. This movie, I went back and forth during it, whether I liked it or didn't. It wasn't great, but wasn't terrible. It was the third movie I had watched in a row, so maybe that affected it a little bit. I wasn't into it. The next movie, if I was on the fence about City of the Dead, Messiah of Evil, I checked out on. This is dog shit. A young woman heads to a mysterious seaside town in a search for her father. I didn't give a fuck. I didn't make it to the end. I don't think she found him, but like I said, this was the last movie, and this was really the one where I'm like, nah, I'm done with this. It also could have been because Creep Show the series was up next. Now, I had originally watched this a while ago, and I had left off at season 1, episode 5. And I wish I had watched this when it first came around, because the first episode, called Night of the Paw, this lady, you can see she's running from something, gets in a car accident, wakes up in a funeral home with her hand part of her hand amputated. She confronts the guy who saved her. He convinces her to sit down with him and have a drink, explains how she got there, and then also starts talking about this monkey's paw that he had and him and his wife's experiences with it. I thought this episode was a very interesting take on the monkey's paw tale. And once it gets going, it is amazing. Times is Tough and Muskie Holler is the second tale on this. Oh, I should say, just like the Creepshow animated special, each of these episodes has two tales. Now, in this second one, a mayor and the people that assisted him in the handling, at first you see a mayor and it almost seems like his team getting punished. And then once the episode unfolds, you see it's because of how they dealt with a zombie situation. I would check this out. This was more heavy on the gruesome and gore, but it was still very much interesting. Now, they finish off season 1, episode 6 with Skin Crawlers. This episode, I don't even know how to put it into words. I would say it's great, but you have to be there for when the episode takes its turn. Basically, there's this new weight loss method that everybody's getting in. It's almost instantaneous. This man goes down for the consultation, realizes it's not something he wants to get into, and he decides not to do it. Eventually, he sees somebody that went through it and gets talked to demonstrating it on live TV. You have to see where this episode goes after this. It is great. The second story on this episode, not as great, but it's still interesting. A young lady is ridiculed for believing in this lake monster that her dad died searching for. You know, her mom wants her to stop talking about it. Her abusive mom's boyfriend is sick of hearing about it. And they make an amazing discovery later in the episode that has unintended results. Not as strong as the Skin Crawlers episode, but still worth checking out. Any of these really are. Now, season 2, episode 1 starts with Model Kid. This young boy is terrorized by his uncle for being so into horror figures, and things like that. Midway through the episode, the boy gets a chance at revenge in an unusual way, and it's worth checking out. Because once again, a lot of these, when that turn in the story hits, that's where the episode really picks up. Now, Public Television of the Dead, I want to talk about this because when WandaVision came out, I love the aesthetics that they got right about old time TV. They hit all the details right to make it look like what you were watching is what they were trying to portray. And in this, it's a public television station where you get your morning kid show character. You got your Bob Ross style painter. You got your home show appraiser. And a book is brought to this public access show to be appraised. It turns out it's the Necronomicon. If you notice it, it looks like the same version from the Evil Dead 2. And as a topper, Ted Raimi presents the book on this show. All hell breaks loose after that. And this was a fun episode. This was the one that I think I got most into. I'm going to breeze over season 2, episode 2, Dead and Breakfast and Pesticide. Dead and Breakfast, this struggling horror theme, or should I say serial killer theme, bed and breakfast, they're really struggling to find their niche. They hope that inviting a social influencer in to kind of maybe give them some good reviews would help them out. Once again, you have to see where it goes from there. Worth watching, but I just wasn't as into it as I was like Public Television of the Dead, Skin Crawlers, or Night of the Paw. Pesticide, Exterminator. Ooh, not a Terminator. What am I talking about? This ain't Schwarzenegger. An Exterminator gets a unique call, and you really got to see it from there. Interesting story, but not as wild for me. Season 2, episode 2 of Creepshow has an episode called The Right Snuff. So 2 astronauts are set to make first contact with alien life. At one point during the episode, you find out only one of them is chosen to make that contact. And you kind of see how jealousy starts causing this rift and then just has some horrific consequences once it plays out. Once again, interesting story to check out, but I wouldn't say it's must see. Sibling rivalry. I hated this episode when it started because the story is told through a wandering teenage story. Think about like a young girl's Twitter, but just like a teenager trying to explain something to you, and you have to put up with all like the side stories, and it just feels rambling. She's telling her guidance counselor about how she thinks her brother's trying to kill her, and you can see how the guidance counselor just doesn't believe her. After that, the story takes a wild turn, and this turned out to be one of my favorite episodes. I'm basically going to skip over season 2, episode 4, because I watched this one more and I didn't take as many notes. It was an all right episode, but it's not like season 2, episode 5, Night of the Living Late Show. Basically, this dude creates this VR machine that can put you inside your favorite movie. He chooses to go inside his favorite movie, Horror Express. And you can kind of see how when he really gets into the virtual reality, his virtual life becomes more important than his real world life. And there are some awful consequences coming out of that. And that's basically what I watched this week. I wanted to watch more, and I'm ending with an also featured list because if you're not going to check out Creepshow, the animated special, or Elvira's 40th anniversary, very scary, very special, or even Creepshow, the series, here's some other things you might like on there. The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs. He used to have a show like that on USA. I watched an episode of that. That's an original series for Shudder. That's pretty good. Creepshow is also an original series for Shudder. Eli's Roth, History of Horror Uncut, is a Shudder original podcast. I didn't watch that. They've got Blackula, Scream, and they have plenty of other original series and movies. If I had to rate this on a scale of 1 to 5, I would give it a strong 3.5. Creepshow, huge on there. The Creepshow animated series. I guess maybe more horror that I was aware of. You would have to play around with the site. Try the 7-day free trial. It's Halloween. Take a vacation week this week. Check it out. I think you will really like it. Get at us in the comments. Let us know what you think. And next week for Horror Business Episode 2, I'm going to get into the Hulu and Amazon offerings and see what the standouts are on there. It'll probably be a little more fair because I had originally just signed up for Shudder for the Creepshow series. So that's why that's what a lot of what I reviewed is. But I will get back to you next week with Hulu and Amazon offerings, and get at us in the comments. What are your favorite scary movies? What do you think we should check out if we are into scary movies? Thank you for joining us, and can't wait to talk to you again next week.